What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Light back at it with another YouTube video. And in today's video we're going to be doing let's talk about the Watchmen comic here on the channel. So yeah, the Watchmen, definitely actually one of my personal favorite comic books. I think it's arguably one of the best comic books ever. I mean, that could be a little bit of a hot take, but that's kind of my opinion. I mean, I honestly think, even from outside my own ranking, I think this is one of the best comic books ever. And just in terms of writing and stuff like that, it's very well done. So yeah, let's first of all let's begin this. I know I'm not. This is not technically a. It kind of is like a loose review here. It's not very strict or anything in terms of review rules or anything. It's more so I'm just talking about it, and maybe giving a rating at the end, talking about some stuff I like, disliked, whatnot. So yeah. Anyways, let's get into it. So yeah, Watchmen, definitely something I wanted to read ever since I started getting into comic books. Uh, or I shouldn't really say. I'll say like this is definitely something I wanted to read. I'm not gonna say ever since I got into comic books, because in all honesty I didn't even know this existed. Like years and years ago, I had no clue about this. But I mean, since about maybe, I would say, early late 2019, I actually really wanted to read this comic book, and I finally got a chance to actually read it, and I gotta say it was pretty good. I mean, it's not like overhyped. I thought maybe it'd be overhyped, because I heard pretty much good things about it. It was it's a good comic book and stuff like that. And I was like, damn, maybe this does. It is pretty good. And I was like, yeah, let's read it. At first, I wasn't sure if I wanted to read it at first, to be honest with you guys. Just because I'd heard it's not a traditional like superhero tale or anything like that. So I wasn't sure at first, but then got into it. Gotta say, must read if you're a comic book fan, especially if you don't like read much of superheroes, for example, or you're interested in getting something one off or whatnot. Definitely something to get into. You don't need to have any prior knowledge at all. So yeah, let's start off with one thing though I want to just quickly address as well. First of all, I know this has been adapted into some media and some forums. For example, there's been an HBO TV show. I heard there's good things about that, but that's not accurate to this, obviously. And then there's the Zack Snyder adaptation, which is the movie. And I actually made the mistake of watching that first, which is a real stupid idiot move by me. I honestly can't even lie. I wish I had read this before, but honestly, now that I've watched and read the book, comic book and the movie, I gotta say, Zack Snyder's Watchmen, I am not a fan anymore. I don't think it's very good. But that's just my personal opinion on that topic. But anyways, let's continue off with this comic book. I definitely thought it was one of the better of the comic book writing. I think Alan Moore is definitely one of the most gifted comic book writers in all of like the comic industry. Uh, I forgot to say this before too. Watchmen was a 12 issue series that came out back in 1985. Uh, and it was written by Alan Moore and drawn by Dave Gibbons. One thing to also note as well is this is a DC comic. Even though it does not utilize DC characters, that comes later. But I mean, this is a DC comic, as well as Alan Moore is the one who kind of like was heavily written in this, and he, in case you care about this, he does not consider anything else that DC has put out canon or really like support any of that. So that was one thing I must say just straight off the bat, in case it might affect it. Honestly, I haven't read like Doomsday Clock or any of that stuff, or I haven't even seen the HBO show yet. Uh, all I've really seen in terms of The Watchmen is basically just The Watchmen, this comic book, and the Zack Snyder movie. So that's it. Uh, yeah, just in case somebody was wondering or whatnot. So, anyways, let's get into it. So yeah, basically a synopsis of the book is basically it takes place in the like 40s and 60s, or present day at this time, which is 1985, and pretty much it reimagines if superheroes existed during the 40s and 60s, and basically helped out in say the Vietnam War, the Cold War, and all that basically didn't happen. And then superheroes end up getting outlawed, pretty much, and most of them are in retirement or either going on government run jobs. And then one day, a character known as the comedian ends up dying, and pretty much it goes downhill from there with a bunch of stuff happening. And yeah, it's kind of like a mystery. I gotta say, this comic book is really good and very well written in terms of the fact that I think the mystery is really done very, very well. Uh, I must say, like, this is probably one of the great in terms of comics in terms of mysterious. I gotta say one other comic that kind of sticks out to me that I'm gonna talk about actually on a YouTube video is Batman: The Long Halloween. I thought that was another good mystery comic book, but I gotta say this one's pretty good. The thing I like a lot about it is it's very long in the sense that it gives a lot of character development, a lot of like explanation of the character. As I said, like you can go into this completely blind. That's fine. Uh, like it gives good explanation of all the characters. From example, Rorschach, uh, Doctor Manhattan. It gives a good like insight into who these guys are as who these guys are as a character. For example, like what happened to Doctor Manhattan for him to turn like that. What happened to Rorschach? Why did he turn like that? So that was interesting. I also liked how they showcased like stuff happening to them as well as like real world events as well, which is interesting because actually on in here it's like they're on the cusp of like World War III, with the Soviet Union fighting the United States. So basically the Cold War, if you think about it. Uh, yeah, and the character in the end. I completely forgot to say this, but spoiler warning. I'm not gonna say it completely spoils the comic because I watched the movie again, uh, and it had a similar ending as well. So it's not it's not completely ruined if you don't figure this out. But basically, at the end, it's revealed that one of the superhero friends ends up being the one who's like the mastermind behind the plan and everything, and he does all this bad stuff and all this craziness. I'm not gonna go into full like explanation of what he does, but basically he's behind it all. His name is Osmictus. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I might totally mispronounce his name. Like before, I didn't even know how to pronounce Rorschach's name properly. That's just completely my fault. It takes me a little bit to kind of learn names like that. For example, that's just kind of me, honestly. Uh, so yeah, but I mean, comic wise, it's really good. I must say, must read for a comic book fan. In terms of art and stuff, I actually think this is pretty good, especially for the artist. I thought he did a pretty good job, especially with the sense that it doesn't take place. It takes place on Earth as well, in like 80s and stuff like that. But it also has stuff to take place on Mars, for example, because Doctor Manhattan goes to Mars and stuff. And I actually like the art that's around that too, which looks pretty cool. As well as all these characters are completely like made from scratch as well. So I gotta say the art for the characters are very well done. Story wise, again, like written very well. All characters from scratch. This comic was completely from scratch. Personally, to me, Alan Moore, personally, in my personal opinion, I think he's like one of the best comic book writers ever. I really like most of his comics that he writes. I mean, I haven't read all of his comics, but from what I've read, he has some pretty good comics. I haven't read anything that was bad from him or seen anything that was bad from him, so that's pretty good to see. David Gibbons, I'm not too familiar with his work. I know he did some stuff for Green Lantern and stuff afterwards, but yeah. But I mean, Alan Moore again, he's really interesting. I highly recommend like checking out Alan Moore in terms of like what happened with this stuff too, because there's a whole story behind the Watchmen comic in the sense that in certain things of like a whole backlash with DC and Alan Moore and stuff like that. So that's one thing I found that interesting as well. I kind of feel bad for Alan Moore as well because the sense that they're basically just using his work without really caring what he thinks, which I don't think is right, especially because this is basically his own. I mean, honestly, I don't know why he I mean, I understand why. I guess just because of like money and they bought the rights and stuff. But honestly, I think Alan Moore would have been better off if he went to like an indie comic publisher and wrote this comic there instead, so you can have more kind of like rights over it and stuff like that, rather than going to DC. I don't know why though, but there's probably some stuff complicated in that. Of course, I wasn't around during the 80s during this time or something, working at DC, paying attention all the time or something like that. That never happened, but yeah. I mean, Watchmen was definitely an interesting read. I highly recommend it. In terms of rating, I would give it a 10 out of 10. Very good comic. But anyways, that's pretty much it though. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video. Peace.